Juliana, what's going on? How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to chat with you. For those who don't know, I met Juliana in such a unique, fun way. I got a phone call from a Maryland, Florida phone number.
Yeah.
Florida phone
Yeah,
number.
sure.
They're like, hi, this is Juliana, CEO of like Tech Slice. Like, is this Sean? And I was like, yeah, what's happened? They're like, do you know Marty Hine? Which Marty's my best friend, and ended up being a reference call. I was like busy at work day. I thought it was gonna be 4 minutes. I think 45 minutes later, we talked about business and marketing and all this stuff. Juliana runs a sweet company called Tech Slice, which I will let you explain it. But what draws me about it is the creativity of it, the legacy you're trying to do. So, in a very poor way of explaining it, they take people with great ideas, generally in the healthcare space, and try to bring them to life through software development. And she often partners with them. So she's part of them, part of their journey for the long haul. And it's so cool. You have roots in Maryland and Baltimore, not just cool because that's a cool connection to me. Like you're working with the community, trying to make a good impact in the world, make actual partnerships, not just quick cash. So that just excited me. We've had a couple other calls and thought it'd be nice to hop on here. How'd I do explaining that?
Absolutely. You did great. I mean,
Awesome.
we have a lot going on. I mean, I think the community and mentorship is a core focus of what we do, regardless of what vertical it's in. And right now, our focus is really in the medical and ed tech sector. So, yeah, taking ideation to commercialization. So, we are the software implementation arm. We're the doers, we're the behind the curtain
Yeah.
folks who help scale these companies from a software perspective and
Awesome.
invest in them from a sweat equity perspective. But that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, yeah. What made you go down like that healthcare route?
Purely accident.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our overall methodology is really taking all of our expertise and applying it to what we consider legacy verticals. So some, healthcare and education both are sometimes stuck in the stone ages as far as modernization goes, and there's so much work to be done in those fields. So we really wanted to focus on those two verticals or aspects of industry that have a lasting impact on the community and people's health and making the world a better place. So for us, we consider those verticals as the focus for us because we think improving those and modernizing those verticals will make the world a better place.
So you're trying to take your expertise in software and affect the world positively to the best you can, right? That's awesome. I maybe it sounds like, I'll tell you, when I'm like pitching someone about my company, it kind of sounds like a little bit of the story that I give because I started working in the power tool space for Milwaukee Tools. Shout out Milwaukee Tools. Love the company, love the people, love the mission. It didn't after a couple of years, like I learned a lot being in the corporate space. I was like brokering deals with Home Depot, cool experiences, but like it wasn't just like true to my core, right? There it wasn't necessarily good for the environment. I wasn't necessarily passionate about power tools. I will say if one company can make you passionate about power tools, it's Milwaukee. But and then that's why I started this company. I was like, let me start like a fitness company. And I tried to start a company to take people on backpacking trips, where I would take people, right, like 7 days, into the wilderness, whatever. As you can imagine, there's a lot of liability and legal concerns with that. And like the sales process is like beyond a consultative sales process. They everyone's like extremely worried and they want to hear that you've been in those mountains for 30 years. So I tabled that idea. That's my next business. Don't tell anyone. And I realized, like, I was like, hey, I can do marketing. Let me try to market with fitness and wellness brands that I enjoy their mission, right? And how can I expand the impact that they have on the world?
Yeah.
You're definitely a little more on like the healthcare side. I guess more on like the fitness wellness side, but there's certainly a crossover in thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're more of the reactive
Mhm.
side right now. And we hope to move more into the proactive side where I view everything that you're doing as more of the lifestyle stuff, the proactive things that, keep you out of the more reactive situations. And obviously, we're working with, that's not true across the board. I mean, the stuff that we're working on, it doesn't really matter how healthy you are. It's just if you end up in a ICU unit,
Yeah.
there for
Eh,
a number of ways.
there's an absolute need for both. Some would say that reactive side might be more critical. I'll tell you, I just thought of someone. I have someone who's a very close friend of mine going through his PhD right now. He's actually one of the reasons I started the company, because the first client I had was called The Fabulous, and we tried to start a company. Me and this guy Heath, we tried to start a company where we were trying to. He's a visionary to the max. He's like, I just want to like completely change the healthcare system for like the United States, and talking about this stuff. And I remember he told me, he goes, what type of job do you get for that? I'm like, owner. Like, that's you're the owner with like that, vision. So we thought the best way to learn was, research what companies are doing what we're doing today. And we found this company, The Fabulous, that wasn't on the healthcare spot, but they were in the proactive spot. So they're trying to help people build new habits into their life that, of course, hopefully end up, saving you trips to the doctor and whatever. But he is someone I just jotted down I want to connect you with, because he's a doctor, he's a visionary. I think you guys would have fun, at least chatting a little bit.
Absolutely. I love nerding out. And that's the thing. I feel like most entrepreneurs, or you get this, like, I feel like I have this magnet effect now when you're in bubbles and you're like, yes, like he gets it, like, let's go. And you're like crazy optimistic. You're like, I'm going to make the world a better place. And you look and how you're going to do it. And I think entrepreneurs have this great way to take things that matter to them, and by creating a business, now you're widening that scope of impact. And our thing is,
Yeah.
how do we build up Baltimore? How do we build up Maryland? How do we build up how we understand healthcare or the brain in the entire country or internationally? And 5 years ago, if you told me that, I'm like, you're crazy, but I'm like, that sounds cool, let's try and figure out how to do it. And
Yeah.
I feel like I keep just waiting for the next level. I'm like, oh, that's great, let's figure out how we can capture consciousness now, or like, let's figure out this next stage. So I mean, I think having the visionaries and the dreamers to sit down and have that creative time and be like, all right, what's the craziest things that we think we can come up with, and somehow we figure out a way to make it happen. And it's not always a climb the ladder, you see
Yeah.
not a vertical or like a straight linear kind of roadmap.
Hockey stick.
It's ideally we'd love
Hockey stick with a roller coaster.
all kinds of things.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking more about like one of those roller coasters, like up, zoom, and you go.
All the circles.
Yeah. That's you said something. I can't help jotting notes when I talk to someone with energy like you. You said the magnet effect of entrepreneurs. I've never thought about it that way, but people are in entrepreneur groups and things like that, and there's definitely some baseline thoughts, beliefs, energy, anything's possible that that is magnetic with like entrepreneurs. And to be honest, I almost feel like a fraud calling myself an entrepreneur, because my company's not where I want to be yet. But that's neither here nor there. I love that. And I want to relate that to the theme of the podcast. So the title of the podcast, right? Happiness, life's ultimate discipline. So and I kind of briefed you, about like why we started the podcast and stuff like that. And it's cool to see, like the energy that I feel from you is that, you're chasing happiness through work. And that is almost, I don't want to say chasing happiness, it's funny. I actually don't like the word happiness. I use it because I think it's easy to contextualize, easy to understand, right? Like people understand what I mean, versus if I used enlightenment, awareness, something like that, right? But tell me this loose definition of happiness we have over here and the work you're doing. Do you feel like they're completely connected, or am I missing the mark?
No, I mean,
It's a big one.
I mean, I think that's a paradox of happiness, right? You're like, oh, people understand it. I really don't think happiness is well understood. It is I think, arbitrary. It is a mindset. I think it's a combination of things. I had this conversation with somebody the other day where talk a lot about people versus process, or understanding. This is gonna be a long-winded answer.
I love it.
Um, about when you see like these budding entrepreneurs, especially in a ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, where you're still bubbling up to getting past the seed stage of businesses. You see a lot of entrepreneurs and advice coming from the senior level folks who've maybe already made it, and they're coming down to these new budding entrepreneurs saying, hey, all you need to do is focus on one thing. People are dynamic, and I think people forget that. So whether it's a new entrepreneur or a senior serial entrepreneur, you are a dynamic person with dynamic interests, and you have multiple skills, and those skills can be intertwined and built upon each other. I think the same is true for happiness, right? It's not a one size fits all solution. It's not like, hey, if I'm doing this one thing, it's saying, how am I still engaging? And for me, happiness is when I see the results of my work, when I have a challenge and I'm able to prove myself, the imposter syndrome inside, wrong, right? And say, hey, I was able to achieve that, and I was able to make a difference. And I can see the results of our efforts, not only like in our community, but just generally, like, hey, this is changing the scope or landscape of what's going on. So in a way, work is very much tied to my happiness. And it's a very dangerous place to be. But I think it's more fulfillment and me being a curious person or a curious learner. And I think that's important to our business and everything we do. I talk to my team and my business partner. I'm like, the second this becomes fun, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, it should always be fun. Like, even if it's challenging and hard and we're in the muck and like not everything's perfect, right? It's super important to me that we're approaching this with a side of curiosity of like, oh, this is still really cool. This is a challenging problem. Like, how do we overcome that? The second you lose that mindset, it becomes transactional, it becomes something different, something else. And I never want to lose that aspect of fun and loving what we do. And I know that's a super cliche thing, but if we're not actively having fun solving these problems, then what are we doing? Like, we need to shift our focus somewhere else. And I think it's really important that when I think of happiness, it's, did I leave something here that I'm proud of? Did I leave a legacy behind that I can be like, I have to feel like I did something. And for me, like, that would make me happy.
Yeah. You know, I've heard people talk about happiness, or I should say success. Like, the definition of success is the progression towards a predetermined ideal. So it doesn't mean that you accomplish something. It's that you have this ideal, this goal, this thought that is predetermined, right? You're taking time to consider why you want to chase it, and then you progress towards it. And that is how I heard someone talk about success. And whether, I'm not saying success equals happiness, but they're definitely, they are interrelated, right? People that are productive and acting upon their beliefs are certainly happier. I mean, lots of studies show that. And what excites me about you is what you just said about curiosity. So curiosity is a powerful word. Most of us repress curiosity to the maximum. And it, honestly, I do it. Everyone does it a little bit. But to stay curious, I think you need to have a high level awareness, because I'll tell you, yesterday I was a little bit overwhelmed, and it got me into, I'm very fortunate to say, a rare funk, but I was in like a little funk for like an hour or two in the middle of the day, where I just kind of felt like, what, I have all this going on. And I took a step back and I said, like, let me go back to my goals. And as an entrepreneur, we're very lucky that our life goals and our business goals can collide, right? So I looked at my goal and how I'm using this business to achieve my goal. And I realized what I'm doing is deep, deep, deep down in the weeds, but it was a tactical thing that's going to support, like a strategy that's going to help me achieve an objective, that's going to help me reach this mission, right? Like, I was down in the weeds, and I didn't have that overarching awareness of like, this is helping me solve the problem. Yes, this is hard work, right? I was doing like deep research that I was just kind of getting fed up with because I couldn't find anything. But like that's part of the journey. And I think I don't know, I think there's like an awareness that needs to go into be curious. Do you find when you're in the weeds sometimes it's like really difficult to, you know, keep that high overarching awareness?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a challenge for everyone, right? Regardless of entrepreneur or not.
Absolutely.
And when you were talking, it just reminded me like going back to the why. I think that's borrowed from somebody, but I think it's really useful. And if you want to sum me up and basically like know everything about me there is to know, my thing is at the end of the day, my why is like I want somebody to know that I was here and for a positive reason. So that legacy of hey, I did something or I was here. That is my
Yeah.
why. Like I was here and it's for a positive reason, whatever that is. And the second, just about me day to day, I'm basically Dory, like just keep swimming
Yeah.
mixed with a toddler. But why? And that is all you need to know about me day to day.
Dory mixed with a toddler. That's fun. Um, you
Lots
gotta
of
keep
color.
swimming. Lots of color. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say probably clashing colors with a toddler. You
Yeah.
you gotta keep swimming. Like you got to, and you gotta like the swimming too. But always asking why. Yeah, I find that if I don't set aside time weekly, if not even more regularly, to revisit my overall business plan. And I don't mean redo my business plan. I mean revisit it, look at it, understand the mission and some key objectives, and just make sure, there's a great quote out there from someone I used to work with that said, focus wins. And just make sure I'm focused, right? Because it's really easy. Someone sends you an email, you get an idea that takes you on this other idea, strand. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool. At home on the couch on a weekend, like when you're just kind of thinking or taking a run and you feel like thinking about your business or whatever. But it's definitely you definitely have to stay focused and stay sharp there. I want to say one thing. You said you were talking about like starting with or like understanding your why, and you're like you borrowed that from someone. Every thought is borrowed from someone. Every thought is a building block on someone else's. There are thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Because I know you're an avid reader, and I find like when I read a book that I love, I don't know why, I just get a good feeling in my gut, keep reading this,
Yeah.
or when you're done, reread it, whatever.
Yeah.
It's generally, I can look at almost everything in there and say I knew that before, but I didn't like understand it. I didn't like
Yeah.
realize it, or I didn't know a good example of it. And this is a good example. You know what I mean? Like,
Isn't that crazy? It is the most surreal thing when you're like, oh, I read this 5 years ago and it just clicks now. And now you're in a space where it really resonates and hones and you're like, click. And it's just a surreal thing that continues throughout life. I think that's so much fun when that happens. You're like, oh my
it's
gosh.
it's the best. I had a woman named Lauren K. Fritz on. She does breath work, and she was talking about how a specific type of breath can help you be in the zone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Except she does all sorts of cool stuff. She's awesome. And this morning, I was in the gym and I was doing the breath work while doing the exercise, and I just found like I was able to persevere through like more sets, more reps, that type of stuff, with with a, a playful curiosity of like, what does it feel like to get 5 more reps, versus like usually my mindset is in a spot of just like fuck, this shit's so heavy, like
yeah.
or whatever, and I'm just oh, I feel pain, like I'm gonna stop, right? And it's not like breath work, like what it does to like just like get you into like the flow, the mindset. It's not like that was new to me. I completely knew her exact breathwork technique. I've done it before and I just lost it. And then like it came back, and now it's like, I want to do it every single time I enter the gym or enter before conversations, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that brings up a good point where I think the breath and mind and body are so interconnected. And I think breath work, and again, I'm completely ignorant on breath work, but I just know from whenever I had control over my breath, like when I was running or competing or doing anything, or just in general day-to-day life, I felt like I could exercise my mind. And people forget your mind is a muscle as well. So whether
Mhm.
that's creative time, or regardless, focusing and being intentional on how you're exercising your brain. And it sounds so weird, but I realize that actually adds to my overall outlook. It helps me have clarity in mind, peace of mind of like when I'm going into the decisions, right? Not to get stuck in the weeds. Like I can process the weeds so much faster and then say, okay, here's what can be additive to this or compound this towards our goal. And it's a whole different mindset shift in, flexing your brain.
Yeah, I'm taking notes over here because one, I forgot you're a runner. Want to bring that up, but did I tell you I'm writing a book?
No, what? Do tell. Spill the tea.
Let's if I'm writing a book and we're comparing it to a marathon, I'm like lacing up my shoes to get going. I'm like getting my electrolytes in before stretching, getting loose.
Do your
Right,
pre-workout.
yeah, right now I have like I think 107 Google Docs of just like blah, blah.
Yeah.
And there's one Google Doc that's the outline of it. I think I need to hire like a writing coach or something because this is someone needs to wrangle this in. But one of the chapters that I want to write is called um, "Why Do People Play More Than They Practice?" And what I mean by that is I'm going to relate to sports. That's just what I can relate to. Let's say I'm a professional athlete, basketball player, and I'm going out to play a game that I'm getting paid millions of dollars to play. I'm not going to play unless I've been practicing my dribbling, my defense, right? My shot, everything like a million times over. Like I would say, practice what, 10, 20 times more than you play. But yet in life, people just jump into shit like without like, they think they can just, manage their emotions or their mindset, like you were talking about, without building that up like a muscle. And they, I think like awareness, right? Like people talk, there's ways to train your mindfulness. Meditation's a popular one. People are like, oh, why can't I just do this? And it's like, when do you practice? And they expect to be able to do it in a business meeting or whatever. I don't know. That's like a theme that I actually started thinking about as you were talking about flexing that mind muscle.
I think that builds consistency. And that's the big thing. The
Mm.
practice builds consistency. I mean, I think there is so much value and context matters. It's huge, hugely important here in this discussion. But I think there is value to both approaches, right? Just like there's value to both reactive and proactive approaches to health. Um, there's benefits of just jumping in. In software, we call it
Mhm.
like proof of concept or MVP, or just going in there and figuring out what you need. And then you can
Yeah,
go back to the practice field and do that. And the people who, like you said, so I don't want to discourage anyone from just jumping in there and getting
definitely.
dirty and failing and falling flat on their face. Like that's part of the fun, right? Like you can laugh about it and be like, oh, if I
And
actually want to hang out with
that's
this
part
guy.
of the trigger to start the practice, right? Like you got to
Exactly.
fail.
Yeah, like and you mentioned running. I haven't actually worked out in forever. Like I once I was done, I didn't compete. I would go on spurts, but I wasn't very consistent with it. And I
Mhm.
was really focused on, more on the tech side and this, career aspects. And I let a lot of the things, running is fun to me. Running is super important to me. It was my zen. It was everything to me at one point. And that all kind of fell by the wayside. I went to a workout class by this woman Shana, who's like part of one of our partners here, and she's like, just come to class, like check it out. I hadn't worked out in forever. It was the first time, and again, I can push myself, and I did like the 90-minute Bikram yoga. I'm like, fine, it's stretching plus Pilates. Like I got this. Like I've done bar before.
Yeah.
Like let's go. So I was like a dabble workout person, and but not really regimented. I went to her class. This is the first time, literally first time in my entire life, I had to leave the workout class early. I could not finish. And I was like, I'm going to throw up. I have never thrown up from a workout. And like, I've pushed
Yeah.
myself. Like, again, D1, like I was, I've been at it,
It's
but yeah.
it's every human does it, right? And like you've been, don't beat yourself up. You've been crushing it in so many other areas, like in your life. But it just, it's kind of going back to like the theme why the word discipline is in the theme of the podcast, because it's use it or lose it, I think, is with everything in life. I think we're talking before about Dan Millman. In that book, he says the three rules of life are humor, paradox, and change. And to me, change is one of the most important, because nothing stays the same. It's going up or down. You're getting in better shape or worse shape. Your business is growing, or it's not like your business month to month, week to week is never static. No business is. Outflows and inflows are always changing. And that was a realization I had. One of those realizations from like the books, that one of those things like you said you read and then you figure out years later.
Clicks and you're like, ding.
Yeah, I was doing some like mindfulness practice, and I really started to feel an overwhelming sense of calm and gratitude in every situation. So what I do, I stopped. It's like, cool, I did it. It's like I nailed it. It's like, yeah, that didn't work. But actually, there's a guy, Naval Ravikant, says that everyone should meditate for 20 to 30 minutes today, unless you're really, really busy doing important stuff, that has like high implications. Then you should meditate for 1 to 2 hours a day.
There was something where I was really productive. I get my coffee or tea, or sometimes just have something in my hand. And that was just my habit, like have water, whatever it is. I get into work, go out in early, like set up my workspace, right? And then I would leave. And they're like, where are you going? And before I started my company, they're like, where are you going? They'd make fun of me because I had my whole, like, I was so extra at this job. I brought in my own little carpet rug, my little area rug. I just like, I had it. I was very extra. But I would set everything up. I'd get my papers in order, like set up my workstation, and I'm like, all right. And then I would leave and I'd go for a walk, like just walk around the building, and I would just think. So for 15 minutes, like that was my time block, turned off my phone and just walked and looked up at whatever trees or whatever. And sometimes just did laps around the parking lot and said hi, but I never got into like a conversation. And that's how I started my day. And I was so consistent. Like if I did that, that was my one thing that Monday through Friday, or even sometimes Saturdays, I was so
That is beautiful.
It just sometimes takes one thing, like one habit.
What sparked that? I'm sure that doesn't sound like something you read or heard. Sounds like an intuition thing that you just needed to like move the body, clear the mind.
Yeah, it's like, look, I'm in dress pants and like flats. Like I'm not gonna sit here and run. I didn't have time to work out, or was too anxious or stressed or whatever the case may be. And it was just a good reset. Like, here's what I need to do so I can like attack the day, because when you're dealing with recruiting and talking to all these people, you're kind of getting everyone's energy, not to sound, you have a lot coming at you. So it's like, all right, how do I evaluate everything and categorize and attack? It just gives you more of like a reset. You're not a clean slate. So you're not bringing any baggage. You're just like, I'm here. And what I need to.
It gets you going. Did you try to think about work? Did you try to think about not like anything, whatever, just naturally?
No, I just tried not to think about any, like in general. It wasn't like, don't think about nothing, think about nothing. I was just like, all I know is I'll set up my stuff. I can think about stuff, but once I'm out that door, I'm just going for a walk. And I had no expectations, no agenda. I was just like, I have 15 minutes and I'm out the door. And I would just like, oh, here's a deer. Here's that cool piece of grass. And I would just walk. And there's no agenda. And I felt like that was thinking about it back on it. I'm like, I would love to do, I try to do like yoga in the middle of the day, and I'm trying to do trying to find something else where I'm like, all right, I need to get this back in a rotation. But sometimes I feel like, okay, just coming in here, oh, I can go walk. Like bringing that back is the easiest, most consistent thing for me. So I think just bringing that back. Now that I think about it, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I've been trying to search for.
Yeah. I find with habits, doing them at the beginning of things, right? Exercise, beginning of the day, your 15-minute walk, before you jump into it, because you have the most control then, right? You might set up time, not to say you can't set up time like in the middle of the day for yoga. Of course you can. It's just a little more difficult, right? Like you might have a meeting go long, or hey, a big client might ask for a proposal and you're like, you know what? I'm going to scratch it today, but it's justified today. It's justified because of this, right? It's like,
yeah, that does not work for me. If I don't do it in the morning or like make it part of my routine in the morning, it's not going to happen.
you got to win the morning.
Yeah.
I find winning the morning. Some people that know me well know like I'm almost a little bit obnoxious about it. And I honestly I have to be, because I have to. It's still hard for me. It's still hard for me to wake up in the morning. So like I have to be like rah rah to myself, Um, and but what I find is, so I try to wake up at 4:15 every day, and I value sleep quite a bit. And what I find is if you just don't negotiate that 4:15 alarm, it's coming. And there's a 4:16 and a 4:17 too if you decide to hit snooze. It's coming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It changes your priorities, because at 8:15 at night, when I try to go to bed, try to get 8 hours, if I feel inclined to scroll on social media, look at Netflix, I'm like, dude, that alarm's coming. Like
Yeah.
that's my one rule, is not to negotiate with myself,
You
right?
can't, if you're setting those standards for yourself, like I think that is a really important thing that people miss. Setting those rules and standards and like the non-negotiables boundaries for yourself
Yeah.
also reflect on how other people treat you. Like if you can't respect your own boundaries, why would somebody else respect your boundaries? Right? You're setting the rules of how they view you and how they can engage you, right? If you don't have that standard for yourself, like I think self standards and boundaries are super, super important.
That's the snippet right there. That 20-second snippet. Everyone watch this podcast with Juliana. That snippet right there. You're so right, because um I've realized that people, we all naturally waste time, distract ourselves from what's important. That's just natural. All of us, especially me. um, and I realized, like, if you like make it clear, not like in an obnoxious way, but you make it clear to yourself, right, that like I'm like I have a little integrity over what I say to myself, and a little bit of discipline. People start to treat you with that. You know, it's that, they come to you and want to make sure, hey, this time's valuable. I want to make sure I'm focused when I speak with Juliana, right? Like I understand that and it's not just from status, right? It's not just because you're the CEO. It's
Yeah.
because you carry yourself with respect, because I think, I don't think status goes a long way, especially anymore. It's something I enjoy about 2022 is, barriers are getting knocked down. People aren't scared to chat with whoever.
No, and that was the thing too. I mean, it's funny. I mean, we alluded to kind of imposter syndrome earlier in the podcast, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But it's funny. People see me as a CEO. I don't even really see myself as a CEO. Like I think throughout my career and even now, I just see myself as a person. I see everyone else as a person. Like there's not really this whole hierarchy for me. But maybe that's just me. I mean, I feel like some people are intimidated to come up and talk. And I'm like, why? I'm the same person. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes like how some people realize like they don't realize that they're aging. You're like, I still feel like I'm in my 20s. What's going on? Like,
Right. Well, I think it could reflect some insecurities on individuals, because I remember I used to make it a point. So when I worked at Milwaukee Tool, I made it a point that twice a month I'd walk into the president's office, and twice a month I'd walk into the president of my business unit's office. And that was my goal. And then the side note was, don't waste their time.
yeah,
So if I was going to walk in, it was a new idea that I vetted out, and I just wanted 1 second to get your thoughts on this, right? It wasn't, hey, how's your day? Like,
right.
I
Stop
mean,
wasting my time. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's like, so they treated themselves well, and I wanted to be surrounded by them, and I was going to try to they weren't just the present, right? They really treated themselves well and treated others well. And so like that's one thing that like I found, because I do remember when I started, this was later in my career. I do remember when I started, I had that same ambition where like I'd walk into my boss office all the time and be like, hey man, how the kids, like whatever. And
Yeah.
like I started to realize like you're literally, you're being nice, but overall you're detracting from his life. Like you're
Yeah.
being more of a distraction than you are a value.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of like click. And then it makes you check yourself, right? Like, okay, I need to come in with like some predetermined idea, like, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, context matters, like especially
Of
in
course.
work, like you're in work mode, that's very different versus like just meeting somebody off the street, with no agenda. But
Yeah.
something that served me really well throughout my career and continues to this day is I always try and be mindful of somebody else's perspective. And the danger there is, making too many assumptions. So there's a
Mhm.
fine balance there. It's saying, hey, you're running a business, you're marketing, you're trying to grow your client base, you're in the proactive kind of health wellness genre. Like, what can I do to add value to you? You'll understand your perspective. So it's from almost like a econ point of view. It's
Yeah.
what is your behavioral economics kind of what is your incentive? What's your angle? What's your perspective of
Yeah.
what might be important to you? What are your personal goals, right?
Hmm.
Hey, maybe you want to you don't want to be doing this forever. You want to be so successful and have this while running like a well-oiled machine. So then you can move off to your backpacker adventure mindfulness retreats, right?
How'd you
And
know?
how do we get there? So it's understanding everyone's different angles, right? And understanding it's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's understanding what might be, and I think it comes into empathy and maybe mindfulness or just being, I think, respectful of that person's time, because that's the one resource that you don't get back. So I really appreciate that when people are mindful of time and, hey, I'm being added to your life, right? Like I'm using this time in a productive way versus, you know, I mean, again, it's different if it's somebody off the street, but if especially in a business context, it's, are you being additive to us
Yeah.
achieving goals, or can I help you out here, or is this an
Hmm.
education opportunity or mentor opportunity? But it's understanding what the end goals are of that person on the other side, I think, are really important in all interactions, internal, external,
Yeah,
vendor
for
partners.
sure. I love what you said about perspective. I find a lot of times we lose perspective, right? Think about if you're in like, a sales, like prospecting mode, right? Like, and you want to reach out to someone, you got to reach out to someone in a way that's going to like help and be valuable to them. Or if you bring up like a negative, do they even understand like the what we're like talking about? It's something that's, we're all self-centered. I find myself so naturally self-centered, which is not fun to admit, but it's how I think. I'm thinking like, how can I do this? What is my thoughts on this versus, and I try to hold that perspective. So I'm going to take that energy you gave me and try to do that. That'll be a focus for the day. When I talk to anyone, think about their perspective. Um, so I don't want to focus just on entrepreneurs in this conversation, but that is one thing that we have in common. And you talked about time as a resource we can't get back. This is something I've thought about quite a bit. When I look at resources, what we have, I look at about like three things. Okay, that we have time, we have energy, and we have money. It's a bummer we have to toss money in there, or
Or resources.
whatever, but it is right. Whether any sort of commodity, I guess. But time, energy, and money. And I realize it seems that most people value money, then energy, then time. Right. The first thing well, I need to contextualize my word value.
Yeah.
When I say value, so I think people think they value the exact opposite: time, then your energy, then money. When I think about what somebody values, it's not what they tell me they value, it's what their actions indicate that they value. So
Mhm.
that's what I mean by value. I don't mean they think money is more important than time.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of people focus on money, and then like energy, like they want to conserve and preserve their energy. And like by sitting on the couch and watching TV, and they don't care if 90 minutes or 3 hours go by, right? Social media, right? Like these things are free and low energy, but big time. I don't know. I know, I'm sure you haven't like thought about it like that. That's my weird little like thought of like our three resources. But um, as an entrepreneur, how do you protect your time? because I think that's important to, because you can't be selfish, but you do need to protect it to prioritize.
So the truthful answer is I didn't for a very long time.
Mhm.
And I saw the effects of that, which weren't necessarily great. And it, hurt me in a lot of ways. So I think just from lessons learned, um, my daughter lit a fire under me. So with her, I mean, again, personal does affect business and business affects personal. Um, I think those are very closely tied to my why, right? Where I feel like, all right, here's what I want to do, here's my why, and I have limited time to achieve that. So I'm hyper focused on, I am very protective of my time now. And I
Yeah.
guess how I do it is it's one of the non-negotiables for me. It's saying, I built a team, I have good partners, I've set up the foundation so I can have that time back. And of course, there's always things that drag me into it, but work will always be there. My daughter and me won't. We're not
Yeah.
going to have that time back. So for me, in a business context, I'm like, all right, if I have the next, 13 to 16 years before she's out in the world, maybe sooner, depending on our genes, um, you know, then if, it takes, assume 5 years for those changes to take effect in the world, from what we outlay, I really have the next 5 years to get shit done. So for me, and when you talk about developing, especially in our business, new businesses or software, I'm like, okay, you take 1 to 3 years. So I have to be super selective of like the clients that we take on, the opportunities we're taking on,
Mm-hmm.
where I spend my time and energy, and how much energy I'm pouring into those. But when it comes to energy, I feel like same thing with curiosity. It's contagious. So like I've got energy to burn. Like, let's go. I will never have a problem with
And
that.
it breeds more energy. People think you have this finite energy. All right. I probably, well,
I
first of
don't,
all,
my
thank
team
you.
doesn't let me drink caffeine some days.
Good. Caffeine's fine for you. That's great though. What I'm hearing is that, like with a daughter, it's like you're putting yourself into these positions where you understand I'm going to have to perform, right? Like I need to perform. I have now, it's not just for me, it's for my daughter, right? It's like I think about it when I quit my job. I once heard the only thing more addicting than heroin and nicotine is a biweekly paycheck. And the same thing. I've always been frugal, and I was like, oh, like I want to know exactly how much I'm going to make every other Friday. And when I quit that, it was kind of like, again, I'm still very, like financially, like I try to be focused and careful with my money. I don't love the word frugal, but I would say I'm on that side. And I'm like, so you jump in and then you have to perform. It's like skiing. We were talking about skiing and
Yeah.
snowboarding last time. Just go down the hill and
Yeah.
it forces you to sharpen your focus and enter that Zen moment that you talked about. What excites me about energy of those three is the one that I feel the most close to self-actualized in. And the reason is I feel I can create energy. And that is an area that I hope to spread with people. Like I have family members that exercise is like core to me, as you can tell, that ask like how do you have the energy to exercise? I'm like, don't you realize like exercise and eating well like create more energy?
Yeah.
This creates water, creates more energy. Talking to people like you.
I got mine.
Text slice. There you go. That's a sweet little water bottle. To have like a little screw on
It's
top.
carbon. Yeah, it's carbon neutral too.
Carbon neutral, baby. Text slice. Get your carbon neutral water bottles. Is there a smiley face on the bottom?
Yeah, there is.
Nice. Love it. So everyone can see you smiling.
It's like me out on the back.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I think energy is one of the most beautiful things. I'll tell you, that same guy who I'm going to introduce you to, that I mentioned in the beginning, he once told me about how he spends his time. He says it happens subconsciously, but he enters a conversation and he understands I'm going to give this person all my energy, my focus, everything I got. And quickly, if they're not reciprocating that energy and this conversation is an energy drainer, then I decide, is it worth it? What would you say?
Exit left.
Exit left. Yeah. Is it worth it? And there's some exceptions, right? I don't know, you're having a difficult conversation, you're supporting a family member, friend, employee, whatever. Sometimes we gotta give more than we get. But yeah, basically he's like exit left, right? If I'm just talking to someone who's draining, but if someone's gonna give you that energy back, even if there's no agenda to the call, this is my advice. People take the conversation, stay in it. Like that is like what life is about.
Yeah. And there's some people too, like in your life or even business partners, or like I called somebody this morning. I'm like running around and I just did a reset. I'm like, hey, this person makes me happy and smile. Like when I talk to them, and I did like a 5-minute call. I'm like, all right, cool. I feel like jazzed up for the day. Get to talk to
That's
Sean
awesome.
later. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
So I
I
think energy is less of a problem, and energy dictates your time. I think, managing your time again, that are they additive, or if are they a detractor? I mean, that can be a good rule of thumb to like manage your time, right?
yeah.
Of course, there's exceptions, but I think when you set up I guess if I were to give somebody advice, if you were to set up on time management, it's less, you can always create rules and tools and systems to organize that. But I think to hold yourself accountable to that, to, actually have those systems work for you and not fail within a short period of time and fizzle out, is really figure out what's important to you and have that non-negotiation like mindset of, okay, this is what
Mm,
I'm going to prioritize and spend my time and energy into.
yeah. So what you're saying is, yeah, tools and whatever might be useful maybe to kind of get started more, but really you need to understand what you value, what you prioritize, and kind of try to go with more intuition than anything.
Yeah, or just it goes back to your why, right? And then once you have that and you have the hard, fast rules, it'll be very clear what should be a priority and what you should just be spending your time on and not. That kind of guides the rest of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I mean, you say it, you know, what you say it so simply, which means you spent a lot of time thinking about it and working on it. Because if that's to me what genius is, when someone can simplify a complex topic, right? And it shows that there's a lot of effort behind it. I like to call that stuff inner work, right? I generally sit down with a whiteboard, write like my whole life plan out, and then once I think I get it, I erase and I fix it right when I get perfect. Generally stare at it for a little and then erase it and never look at it again because I just like to get it out there into the world. But do you mind me asking like what your quote unquote inner work like looks like? Like some people meditate, journal, some people there's no formal practice. It's just kind of something they think about.
Yeah. My
Well, it's clear your why. You didn't just be like,
yes.
oh, this is my why, right? Like there
Yeah.
was some thought there.
A lot of crying was involved.
Good. Crying's great emotion.
A lot of crying. Imagine we got a little tour going on here too.
No
No,
worries.
you're good. You're good. Yes, yes. I will come up and say hi in a second. We're in a podcast. Whoop whoop. Um, so I think for me, it was figuring out what I really wanted, right? I feel like I lived my 21 lives out of whatever 7 or 9 you're supposed to have. And it's like, all right, I'm here. What am I gonna do? Like, what is important to me? And we talked a little bit about like writing things down and holding yourselves accountable. When I have like my literally take a spiral notebook, I don't know why this is my thing, rip it up, like write down my things on like, in pen or paper, and I rip it out and I'm like, this is my random janky piece of paper. I'm like, this is what I'm holding. And it's like my private thing. And I'm like, this is what I'm holding myself accountable to. And they might just be random things like create a fashion line, write a book, write a
Yeah.
poem, whatever the case is, publish a poem. Those are like the random little things I want to do. But the inner working is like, okay, why is this important to me? And I think writing things down for me was the biggest thing. Um, Understanding, sitting down and just like outside or in a place where I felt like I could sit and think clearly, like setting up that environment and saying, what do I really want out of life and what do I want for
Mm,
my daughter? What is important to me? And there's times in those sessions where like I don't really know, right? And I say like I want to be remembered. And what does that look like? I don't know. Right. But I know I want to do it with love, and I want my daughter to have a great experience on this earth, and I want her to be loved. And, um, I write down the things that I'm curious about or that would make me happy, quote unquote, or,
Yeah.
and write that on my ripped out piece of paper. And then I tape it to a wall somewhere, or like put it in a folder that
Make
only
it
where I know
visible.
where it is. Right. Um, and I just, even if it's sitting in that folder, I'm like, I know it's there. And that kind of guides, like, I don't know, the things in life that are super important to me are the moments. It's, which goes back to time, right? Moments and memories. It's those connections that, like, the electron, hitting something else. It's that combination of that experience, whatever that, you quantify that as, that's important to me. And so whatever I can do, I feel like that's intentional. Setting up those interactions and moments are intentional. And, having that clarity of mind for yourself, and being selfish in that, I think is really important for you to show up as your best self and be able to create the things that are important to you, like actualize those throughout your life.
Mm.
I feel like that's really abstract. That might be a long one. So I think it comes down to sitting down, being honest with yourself, ripping yourself apart, and writing things
Yeah.
down.
No, abstract is good. And then, obviously practical is too. And what I'm hearing is first of all, getting quiet, right? Like not,
Yeah.
like taking some time for yourself. I actually put that today, from like my goal is to be done work by 3 today. So I'm going to go to take a walk or go to a coffee shop. I'm gonna bring a little journal with me. I'm not gonna have a cell phone. I'll probably be off the grid for a while. And I don't know why I need it. I don't have a goal. I just need it. You know what I mean? Like you just
Yeah.
need it. But no, I love the concept of taking time, getting quiet, and putting it out into this world. And I think that's just a great place to, wrap this up. Juliana, I feel like we can keep the banter going for a while. I did want to tell you, I'm going to be in Baltimore the end of May, beginning of June. I will mark on my calendar. I promise. Reach out. We'll grab lunch or something. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you. We talked a lot about time and energy. Thank you for your time and energy today. It means a lot that having a discussion that went down that route, I started realizing like she's given me her time and energy. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
No, again, the moments and memories and interactions, I mean, those are important. I think we clicked right off the bat, and, valuing entrepreneurship and making the world a better place. And I think that's a good place to spend energy on, right? With other
Definitely.
people who are like-minded on making the world a better place. So thank you again for the time and consideration, and hosting me today.
Oh, absolutely. With that, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Bye. Thanks, Sean.